Hello there. In this video lesson we're going to show you how you can use the spiral curve command built into Fluid Designer to create spiral bracelets. So if you start Fluid Designer off, first thing you need to do is to go to the bracelets folder, and we're going to use the default object here. 65mm all UK size bracelets, and so if you just drag and drop that onto the workspace. Now we don't want to use this particular object here. What we want to use is just some of the objects built into this. So with that object highlighted, if you press X on, well, I'll just switch on screencast keys, sorry, so any key presses I make here, it should be displayed here. So if I press the X key on the keyboard, and then delete the current object. Now that object was 65mm in diameter, so I'm just going to switch on that object there. So that's my default size that I'm going to work to. So I'm going to create a spiral with a 65mm diameter. Now one of the things I'm going to need here is the toolbox, which is this panel over here. And I just need to move that window up. So I can open the toolbox by pressing the T key on the keyboard to open, T to close, or I can click on the plus at the top here. But I do need this panel open because some properties are going to appear here. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to go to Add and Curve, and one of the default commands on here is a spiral. And we're going to use different types of spiral. So the spiral that's being created at the moment, and I'm just scrolling the center mouse button here to zoom right in, is that object there. And as you can see, it's quite small, and if we look in the properties window, we'll see that it's just got dimensions of 2mm. Now that's clearly no good as a bracelet. So the first thing that we want to do is to change the radius of this spiral. And so if we look over here in the properties window, it says at the moment the radius is 1. That gives us a diameter of 2mm. So radius 1 gives us a diameter, the X and Y values here, of 2mm. Now if we want a 65mm diameter, which is the circle we've got on the screen at the moment, we need a radius of half of that. Half of 65 is 32.5. So if we enter a radius of 32.5, you'll see that spiral changes, and you can see over here that we've got 65mm. Now if we zoom in, you'll see that this is not very round, this spiral. You can see there are lines here not going around the current inner diameter circle. And if I zoom in again, and if I press the Tab key on the keyboard, you'll see that we've got control points here going around our spiral. Now notice the properties panel has disappeared as I've done that. That's one of the disadvantages with using this curve. Sometimes it does disappear on you and you have to actually create it again. So we've got control points going around here, and if I actually count them, I'm pretty sure there are 24. So if I come out of edit mode, now I'm going to have to delete that current spiral in order to get my properties panel up again. So X on the keyboard and delete it, and I need to add curve and spirals again. So if you look at this value here, steps 24, that's what's happening here. So if you actually want a really chunky bracelet, if you reduce the steps down here to say 12 or 10, you can see what's happening here. We can clearly count them now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 steps. So it gives us a 65mm spiral, but it will be not round, it will be quite chunky. So if that's the kind of bracelet that you want, you can change the steps. Now I want a more rounded bracelet, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to change the curve type if I just point at the end here, you'll see we've got a 0, or we can choose option 1. And option 1 is a NURB, or a NURBS curve. And if you go up to add and curve here, notice that we do have NURBS curves, NURBS circles and NURBS paths. Now I like to work with NURBS because you get nice rounded shapes. So I'm going to change the curve type from 0 poly to NURBS. And you'll see what happens there. We've got a much more rounded shape now. Now if we set this back up to 24, which is the default size, okay, and I also need to click over here in curve data information. If you look at the moment, can you see it's not joined? If I click over here, I can join it up. Now I may or may not want to do that. Now because I'm not actually really creating circles here, I'm creating spirals. I don't actually want to join that up, so I'll just leave that switched off. But you can see setting it to 24 restores that. Now we could increase it even higher, and notice it becomes even more like the default 65 millimeters. But the more you do this, the more faces you're going to create. So I'm going to leave it down at the default size of 24 at the moment. I might increase it later. Okay. Now, what else can we change here? Well, we could change this, the number of turns. At the moment, we've only got 1 turn in our spiral. And the whole point of using a spiral is to get more than 1 turn. So if you go back to the opening screen, you'll see my spiral here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 turns in that spiral, and so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to change the number of turns to 2, to 3 and to 4. Now you can't see anything happening at the moment because we haven't got any radius growth or any height changes to this. Now if I click in radius growth in here, if I type in the number 1, you can now see my 4 turns, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And what we mean by radius growth is that this value here is 1 millimeter. So if I change this to 4, my radius growth will be 4 millimeters. And that's so that I could create a bracelet out of it. So let's see what happens if I just leave that as the settings that I've got at the moment. If I want to apply some thickness to this now, we need to go to show the curve data information and apply a bevel object. So if I apply a cross section of 1 by 1, it will wrap it around the whole of this spiral. So there you are. So we've got a thickness of 1 by 1, and we've got this spiral being created. Now if I just zoom in here, one of the things that you should notice is that the end is empty. And it's very important that you actually fill that. And that's what this box here does. So if we click fill caps, you can see it fills it in. Now if you don't fill it in, you won't be able to 3D print this object because it will be empty and there'll be no thickness to it. So it is absolutely vital that you fill it in. Now there is another box here, cyclic U. Now if we click that, what it does is actually joins up the two ends of the spiral. Now you may want to do that, or you may not. Now if you join up the two ends, you don't need to fill caps because there isn't an empty space at the end there. So I'm actually going to switch off that and switch on fill caps. Okay. Now, so there's our spiral bracelet with 4 turns. It's a NURBS type, and we've got a radius growth of 4 millimeters here. Now what I'm now going to do is to give it some height as well. So if I type in a value of 1 millimeter here, you'll see it's added some height. Now notice that when you do that, the bevel object disappears. So I can always just put it back in. And I'm actually going to switch off the grid here. If I go to viewpoints, if I tick this, if I remove the tick from show the grid floor, you can see what's going on a little bit better here. So a height of 1 moves it up 1 millimeter. Height of 2 millimeters, and I'm going to set it to a height of 5, and it's actually 5 between each of these. So the total height is about 20. So the Z value, the blue arrow here is the Z value, and if I go to view and front, the height from the origin up to here is about 20 millimeters. So it's 4 times 5. Remember, we're going round 4 turns, so we're going a height of 5, 10, 15, 20. That's what the Z value is. So if I now apply my thickness again, I could do 1 by 1 or 1 by 2, whichever I choose. And remember, if I'm zooming in there, to fill in the end of it, there's my spiral bracelet. So this object could now be 3D printed. And what you should always remember in Fluid Designer is when you want to 3D print something, you don't go to File and Save, you always go to File and Export. And we like to save objects as wavefront OBJ format. And if you click on Desktop, so what have we got here? Well, we've got a 65 millimeter spiral bracelet. And we export that object file to the desktop. Now that's not completely in 3D printable format. That you must always, with Fluid Designer, run your files through an application called NetFab Basic, just to make a few repairs to it and confirm that it's 3D printable. One of the things that NetFab will do is, where we filled this in at the end, NetFab will fix it 100% watertight so that the object will 3D print. Okay, so there's the spiral command. Now we've only used spiral type 1 here. There are some other types that you can use, so you can switch to spiral type 2, which is the logarithmic one, and notice the growth has gone now. Or you can try spiral type 3, which is the spheric one. Now that might be better suited to earrings because of the shape of it. Or there is also spiral type 4, which is the torus one. So there are different types there, and notice different parameters appear. And really it's just a case of playing around with them and seeing what you come up with. Okay, so that's the spiral curve command in Fluid Designer for 3D printing. And that's the end of this video. Thank you.